and a former film star turned politician is leading the celebrations.
Hollywood has been very kind to me. When I came over here, Hollywood turned me into an action hero. So, of course, when I heard that there was 130 acres around the Hollywood sign that need to be protected, I did what the Terminator was supposed to do, which is to jump into action. And this is exactly what I did.
The sign was built in 1923 as an advert for real estate. Half a century later, it was officially designated an historic landmark. But by 1978, it was disintegrating and had to be saved from collapse. The man who led that campaign, the Playboy mogul Hugh Hefner, has stepped in again. His donation, the final element in an £8 million fundraising campaign to preserve the landscape.
What we're doing now is saving the area around the sign so that you can see the sign in its appropriate pristine glory rather than surrounded by houses.
So this iconic landmark will continue to dominate the skyline above Tinseltown. John Brain, BBC News.
That's it. George is here at 6 o'clock. I'll be back at 10. The weather now then with Susan. Hello, Susan.
Evening, Q. Yes, glorious sunshine there along the length of the Hollywood sign, but the sun not just shining on the rich and famous today. Across much of the UK, we've seen a lot of spring sunshine and some pretty respectable temperatures as well. Different story for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's been a wetter day here and cooler, but this evening we even things out. It's a mild story across the board, becoming increasingly breezy though, and you'll notice that most of all as we push more rain in to Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some heavy rain here for a time through the small hours of Wednesday. England and Wales stay dry and fine, and temperatures dip no lower for some than 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. So on we go into Wednesday, and our temperatures, bear in mind, are off to quite a flying start. So we're in for another pretty warm day, especially to the south of the UK. Further north, we finally fizzle out that rain as well. So it's an improving picture for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But I don't think we're ever going to see too much brightness appearing here. And even further south, where we've seen the sun today, we will struggle with more clouds. So a reasonably fine afternoon across northern England, perhaps just some patchy rain across the higher ground. But temperatures still in the mid-teens here. 12 or 13, I think, as a top temperature for Scotland. More cloud towards the west, thick enough to bring some hill fog and some patchy light rain and drizzle on into the afternoon. For Northern Ireland, pretty grey skies through the afternoon as well, but at least a dry end to the day. For Wales and the southwest of England, well, some sunny spells, I think, through the second half of the day, but not the wide expanses of bright blue skies that we have seen. There will be more cloud around here, but it will stay dry, and a top temperature of 16 or 17 should just about cover it. For the southeast of England, though, and East Anglia, I think tomorrow we'll see temperatures very much like today, 21 or 22 degrees Celsius. Now, that is quite a bit above average for this time of year. We typically expect about 13 at this point in April. Tomorrow, though, looks like it's as high as we go. Here goes the graph. On we go into the start of the bank holiday weekend, and you can see it's all quite literally going downhill. It's a slow breakdown, if you like. Thursday, temperatures come down into the mid to high teens. More cloud around, though, and the chance of some rain. Friday looks like it could be a pretty wet day at the moment across England and Wales, and we're starting all the while to introduce the chillier air. But as we look towards the weekend, particularly the weekend, perhaps not so much the bank holiday Monday, but for the weekend, the area of low pressure that brings Friday's rain really gets wrapped up around itself. Tightening isobars, strong winds for Saturday, and a chance of some heavy rain to the south as well. So it's not looking like a great start at the moment to this bank holiday weekend. Chilly on Saturday and often rather breezy, but fingers crossed, bank holiday Monday at the moment looking dry and brighter.
Britain's top public finance experts issue an election warning. None of the parties is coming clean about dealing with the deficit. Gordon Brown goes on a walkabout. David Cameron kisses a baby. And Nick Clegg meets the people, as all three are accused of not spelling out the cuts.
What's really striking from the plans that the parties have set out is how little detail they're giving of where the cuts in public spending are going to come from.
also tonight. Equal pay for equal grades. Women working for Birmingham Council in line for tens of thousands of pounds in back pay. The tragic deaths of 3 British soldiers killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan. There are calls for a review of battlefield procedures.
Although this is the end of the inquest, there will never be closure or a return to the way things were for us as families.
In the eye of a banking storm, the trader accused of holding back information about the housing slump gets a grilling.
And later in the hour, I'll have the sport, including a bad day at the office so far for Crucible legend Steve Davis, trailing 7 frames to 1, going into tonight's second session of his World Snooker quarter-final.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC's News at 6. We're being kept in the dark about just how tough it's going to be to deal with Britain's record deficit. That's the verdict from some of the country's most highly respected experts. The Institute for Fiscal Studies says none of the party leaders has come close to admitting how swingeing the cuts will have to be. The IFS claims the cuts will be the biggest for a generation. Here's our economics editor, Stephanie Flanders.
They argue in public, but privately they couldn't agree more on the single most important issue facing the country after this election. Our politicians think it's better to keep us in the dark.
What's really striking from the plans that the parties have set out is how little detail they're giving of where the cuts in public spending are going to come from. And they're relying on those cuts to do most of the job. Now, in large part, that's the government's fault for not holding a spending review, cutting up the cake between departments ahead of the election.
So what is the detailed deficit in this campaign? Well, to make its promises add up, the IFS says that Labour needs to find spending cuts adding up to £51 billion a year by 2015. And so far, they've only shown us how 13% of that would be achieved. The Conservatives have promised to cut borrowing faster and with fewer tax rises, so they need to find bigger cuts, about £64 billion a year. So far, they've shown where about 18% of that would come from, less than a fifth. The Liberal Democrats have to find £46.5 billion in cuts by 2015, and they've said how about 25% of that would be achieved, but they need to find more spending cuts after that. And the IFS thinks they're the best of a pretty bad lot.
The most respected independent body scrutinising the different manifestos of the different parties has said emphatically that overall